My mum, who is wonderful, always sort of encouraged me to make that extra bit of effort when I was young, and she never sort of said what the extra bit of effort needed to be. I think she, and I think that was wise of her because she wanted me to figure it out for myself. But there are often ways of going the extra mile, whether it's sort of responding to that customer email or LinkedIn message yourself, whether it's taking the extra few minutes to chat to somebody at the end of the day who's had a difficult day or whatever it is, and that's been really important to me.
Hi everybody and welcome to Phoebe Founder Stories. I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host Juliet. How are you doing, Juliet? Lovely to see you. And Aron Gelbard. How are you doing, Aron? Lovely to see you.
I'm very well, thanks so much for having me here.
And of course Bloom and Wild, which I think we're at that stage now. When you say Bloom and Wild, everybody knows who Bloom and Wild is.
Well, so I know who it is, but it's great that other people do as well, so thank you for that.
But no, I mean, start off by saying massive respect for what you've built with that, and we'll get into the story of everything that you've been doing shortly. But anyway, first question to you, Jules.
Yeah, so Bloom Wild founded in 2013 and trying to disrupt like the sort of flower market. So a lot of people start businesses just wanting to copy what everyone else is doing. So what made you start this and be different from everyone else?
Yeah.
The flower industry needed something different to what everybody else was doing. So, but just a bit about why I started a business first. My dad is an entrepreneur. 3 of my 4 grandparents were entrepreneurs, so it was always something that I hoped to do. My dad has had a lot of downs as well as ups over his career, and so that made me maybe a bit more sort of aware at least of the risks than other entrepreneurs, and so I took quite a traditional path of going to university and working for 8 years first, but always knew I wanted to start something. And I'm very driven by creating positive experiences for people, and I thrive on feedback, both positive feedback but also less positive feedback, and what I can do differently. And that really drew me to the flower industry because flowers really should be amazing every time. They're an emotional product. We send them to each other at the most important emotive moments in our lives. Yet they're really a disappointing product by and large, and industry satisfaction levels are pretty low. So I thought my feedback obsessive personality was such that I could really listen to customers, understand what they weren't happy with the existing options out there, and make something genuinely different and better.
So how's yours better? How's Bloom and Wild better?
I think we look to be better on 4 dimensions, and actually the feedback we get from our customers are consistent with this. So that's our supply chain, our technology, our brand, and our sustainability credentials. So to talk a bit about each of them. From a supply chain perspective, we source our flowers directly from growers. Rather than the flowers passing through a large number of steps on the supply chain.
So they're fresher?
They're fresher, they last longer, they're less expensive for a comparable flower, there's much less waste, which is also much better for the environment. It's one of the things that allows us to be carbon neutral as a business, which is really important. We've built technology that's specific to the flower industry, which nobody else in the industry has really built, which means that we can reliably scale up our production at the peak times that our industry has. It allows us to manage our waste, manage our quality, give customers a seamless experience when they're ordering on mobile or on a website. And then I think we've created a brand that people love. This is, as I said, an emotive category, and for many years people's favorite brand has been Google. And you'll go to Google and type in flower delivery London and click a few links and hope for the best. And we've got favorite brands for all sorts of much more functional products, and it just doesn't make sense to me that for something that as emotive as this, that you're using to express a deep emotion to somebody that you really care about, you just go to Google and roll the dice. So we've sought to change that, and I think we have.
I was just going to ask if you send your partner, family, Bloom and Wild flowers. Or do they get sick of them? It's just like, oh no, not another box of flowers coming through the post.
We do. We actually we have 2 subscriptions. We have a fortnightly Bloom and Wild subscription, and we have we've acquired a couple of other businesses, including a brand called Bloom On, who are also present in the UK, much their business is mainly in other countries. So we have an alternating Bloom and Wild subscription, one fortnight and then every other week, and then Bloom on subscription in the weeks in between. So we constantly have flowers in our house and trying out new styles, and then have other ones for peaks, mini Christmas trees, plants, the work. So we're well stocked.
Marvellous.
Well, I love flowers, so I'd love to be in your house. But the technology that would go behind creating this machine must be phenomenal. Is that the case? The technology in this business is just, you know, through the roof.
Yeah, it's been a huge investment. I totally underestimated it to start with. I budgeted a minuscule amount for how much I thought we'd need for our tech when I started. It's one of the biggest mistakes I've made.
Really?
And you know, we now have a tech and data team of close to 100 people, which is feels like a huge number of people, but we've done amazing things to automate all of the processes that take place behind the scenes to make the customer experience and the customer relationships that we create really seamless. We have recently moved Bloom On, one of the businesses that we acquired, onto our Bloom and Wild tech platform, and have therefore been able to give their customers a more seamless experience than they were having before. So, and we are also able to operate more efficiently as a result of that. So yes, it's been a big investment, but I think it's one of the things that really makes us different, because our peers out there are not investing in technology at anywhere near the same rate, and so they don't have this ability to ultimately gather customer feedback at large scale, see how customers react to different things that we can do that face them all behind the scenes, and make better decisions. And we're pretty sort of learning obsessive as a business. I talked a bit about feedback, but you can learn so much from testing things and gathering feedback and reaction. When we test, should we do something in one way or another way from a tech perspective, we don't only look at which way gives us more sales, we also look at the customer feedback of customers who are given one experience versus another, and we measure that as well. So we want to ultimately make sure that we're getting better review scores or customer satisfaction with any change that we make. And I think by thinking in that way, you're able to connect the technology that you're investing in to the way that you're doing business.
So Aron, how do you see the business that you've created? Is it a flower business, you know, that sells millions of flowers, or is it a tech business that happens to sell flowers?
I don't think it can be one or the other, because different parts of our business focus on each. So we're very much a tech company. We consider ourselves a tech scale-up. Our peers are other tech companies. We've been part of the Tech Nation programs like Future 50 and things like that. We're backed by venture capital investors. But to say that we just happen to sell flowers, I think would do a disservice to sort of the heartbeat of the business, to our culture, to the product that we love and the experiences that we give customers. So I think stylistically we're more like a tech company, but we have a very deep passion for the flowers, which are our product. And I think if we're to start to sell totally different products, then it would require a lot of work to build the same level of passion for other products as we have for our own product.
You're a CEO of a very fast-growing business. What advice would you give to other entrepreneurs that are sort of growing rapidly? You know, the challenges, anything like gems that you would pass on to other people?
A few things. I think firstly the focus on people, being humble, being kind to your people, and creating a place where people love to work, and building that two-way trust and loyalty with people over many years is really important. And I'm really glad I've done that. I think it's been good for the business. It's also made me enjoy the 9 years I spent doing this a lot more than if I hadn't done that.
And the 19 or 29 or 39 years to follow.
At least, 109. I also think in the UK we are maybe a little bit too risk-averse and afraid of failure, and I talked about that a bit myself and at the beginning. And I think in hindsight I could have been bolder at the beginning about what I was trying to create, and how quickly we could potentially get there and how much money it might need to get there. And some of my natural conservatism meant that we maybe went more slowly in the early years than we might have done. And I think if I was to do it again, I would have probably been bolder in the vision that I expressed and maybe tried to raise more money sooner to try and get there. And my advice to other people would be to do the same. But the two things, they sound a bit like they're at odds with each other, but actually I think it's really important. I think you can be bold and ambitious and visionary, but you can do that with a sort of kind and humble style to you rather than with sort of arrogance or swagger, which just isn't very me.
It really isn't, is it? That's why I find just so, I mean, the Bloom and Wild at the moment is a business that's everywhere, everyone's talking about it, and it's just not affecting you at all in terms of any shape or form, in terms of arrogance or anything, is it? And
Thank you.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Appreciate that.
Can I go to the funding?
Yeah.
You've raised a shitload of money across various different series. I think Series D was the latest, was it? You have got, I mean, the word I'm going to use is Index Ventures, for example, is a very sexy, it's American, isn't it? An American VC?
It's European and American.
Is it European and American?
Yeah.
But it's often, it's the tech, you know, in the tech world, it's the VC that you want to get involved. But anyway, some incredible investors raised a phenomenal amount of money. What is your advice for, you know, raising money? It's obviously something that impacts and affects so many businesses. How can you really nail that raise? Any lovely nuggets you've got?
A few things. So firstly, I think it's important to try and sort of find a way to the investors in question and to the right people at these investors. So this could be networking with other companies that have done similar things that these investors have already backed, so that you can just get a contextual introduction rather than sort of applying cold for funding. And you don't necessarily, this isn't about your pre-existing network, but you know, I've got a flower company, so I went out of my way to try and find people who built direct-to-consumer businesses in other verticals, initially to learn from them and to try and exchange notes, but over time also to try and sort of help each other with introductions to relevant investors and folks like that.
Yeah.
So that's a sort of practical how to get there. I think there's then a thing about just understanding the profile of different investors and, you know, really who's going to be the right fit for you, because there's no point for a business like ours approaching an investor that only does sort of enterprise fintech platforms, because they just won't be interested. And I think sometimes people lose that discipline, and it wastes everybody's time. It wastes the entrepreneur's time, the investor's time, and whoever's making the introductions time, and also their credibility as well, if they're making sort of introductions that are unlikely to go anywhere. So doing your research about what sort of investment you need, and therefore who the right partners are, is important. And then finally, perhaps when you're sort of in the room and pitching, I think really being bold in that vision, especially for sort of early stage businesses that are going to look to grow rapidly through technology. It's a high risk investment, and so investors are looking for a large return. Like the cliche is the next Facebook and next Meta now, and you know, for an investor, they will be prepared to see some businesses not succeed in order to have backed a business that's a runaway winner, because that's a more attractive business model for them, and ultimately that's, you know, what they go to work every day to do, and they're professionals as well, than to make like a small return across a large number of businesses. So I think genuinely having that boldness of vision again, which I think I could have done a better job of earlier, and then really going out and sort of leading with that message to investors, I think is super important.
Have you found it in any way stifling? Because, you know, you started the business with a vision, a rookie founder.
Yep.
Like everyone starts out as a rookie founder.
Of course.
And then all of a sudden, you know, you're leading something huge, but surely does it get hard when all of a sudden you have people that have their opinions, and you need to listen to their opinions, and sometimes maybe make those opinions happen in the business? What is that like for the true founder spirit?
Yes and no. So look, yes, it's easier if you aren't accountable to anybody than if you're accountable to lots of people, and those people don't always agree with each other, and so there's some sort of trying to find a common ground that you believe in and that your different investors believe in. And different investors will also have different appetites for risk and reward. Okay. I have investors who invested, in the first few months of the business, and for them they've already made like a large return on their investment. And then I have investors who've invested more recently and haven't made as much return yet because they came in later. So actually like everybody always is motivated for growth, but sometimes the sort of appetite for risk versus reward will vary even among your investor base. So you have to be aware of that and sort of understand different stakeholders and ultimately make the best management decisions in the interest of customers, but also your various shareholders. So that's one observation. I think investors can create quote unquote more work because they ask you to do things, or they ask you for information or things like that. But they can also massively reduce work because they can make firstly because they give you the capital, which means that you can go a lot more quickly than if you had to sort of only live within your means and could only invest in things once you'd earned the money to do so. So, and that with that capital, you can also hire better people who can really help you. So there's a huge amount of benefit from that. I think, secondly, they can open doors to potential customers, to other investors who can invest further down the line, or banks, or all sorts of other people that can be relevant and helpful to you. And because they tend to be experienced and respected and well networked, I found the help has massively exceeded the quote-unquote extra work of having investors to work with versus not having them.
Okay, so it's been an enhancer for you. It's not been something that stifled you. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, just going back to the question about growth, and you touched on it there with investors, that they can help you like by bringing on good people. Your values are very strong, like honesty, integrity. How do you recruit into such a rapidly fast-growing business? Is it on skills or is it on values?
It has to be on both. So the values can't be compromised, and on the rare occasion where it's been borderline and we've gone for somebody despite being uncertain, we've more often than not ended up having made the wrong decision and having to then unwind having hired somebody, which can be difficult. Sometimes people can be turned around and they start with not the best attitude, and you give them feedback early on and they're receptive to feedback, and maybe they've worked in an organisation with a different culture before and they haven't adapted correctly. And we've got some brilliant people who have adapted to our organisation and ways of working and have started maybe rubbing people the wrong way, but over time have really fit in. So it's not sort of 100% binary, but it's really important. I think from a skills perspective, it depends a bit on what the role is and what the level of experience required is. If I was hiring a sort of like infrastructure engineer to manage sort of Amazon Web Services cloud instance,
it doesn't matter how nice they are.
Well, it does, but they also need to know what they're doing, because they can't just sort of figure it out on the job, because it requires too much technical know-how. If we're sort of like bringing somebody in in an entry-level position on our customer delight team, for example, actually we can train them, and we've also invested a lot in training in that part of our business, and so I care a lot more about somebody's attitude, how much they care about the outcomes that we achieve for our customers, than I do about whether they've worked in a job responding to emails before, because I think we can, even if we have such a particular way of doing it, that it may well be different to how they've done it in their previous job.
Can I come to the aspect of international growth now? Because many entrepreneurs dream of nailing a domestic market, and also then going on to into foreign markets. So Grenade went international, right? Yeah,
really quite quickly. Within the first sort of 3-4 months of trading, we were in Germany, and then we got approached by the US.
Right.
It's probably too early.
Really? So in terms of your sort of domestic approach to growing your business nationally. Have you found that all of a sudden that's been a totally different strategy when you're all of a sudden growing a business internationally? Have you learned that they're actually very, very different strategies?
Yes and no. So we have to continue our focus on growing the business in the UK. The UK is still, even after having made 2 acquisitions, well over 50% of our business, and it's where we are able to make a profit because our business here is more mature, and with that profitability from the UK business, we're able to invest in our growth internationally. So we spend a lot of time and focus on our UK business, and it takes a lot of my attention and that of many other people. But we're ambitious and we're trying to change our industry around the world, and so it would be a shame to just focus on the UK when actually the customer problems that I described are global problems rather than UK specific problems. So we've wanted to do business outside the UK as well, and we started doing so of our own accord, and opened up in a few other countries in Europe, and have seen really strong success in Germany, in countries like France, more mixed results, to be honest. And so
Why is that?
I think the Bloom and Wild brand has really resonated in the UK, and actually the Britishness of our brand is something that has really appealed to consumers in Germany from our research. I think what we've learned from our research is there's a really strong desire among French consumers to buy more local products and propositions. Like the cliche would be, French people would more likely buy sort of wine or cheese from France rather than imported cheese, because there's a sort of strong sense of pride around cheese making in France, and something they're really good at. And it sort of turns out it's somewhat similar with flowers, and there's a strong desire to buy locally. And so I think our brand really didn't resonate in France in the same way that it did in Germany, and still does in Germany. And so a couple of years ago in 2020, we made the decision that in addition to growing our business organically, we would also look to raise money to buy 2 other businesses, Bloomon and Bergamot, and we acquired both of those businesses in 2021. And so that's made it extremely different, because all of a sudden we've been focused on building relationships with a whole new team, integrating businesses, integrating processes, systems, technology, which isn't an experience we've needed to focus on in order to grow our UK business. So we've been operators in our home market and in a market like Germany, and then we've been integrators basically in markets like the Netherlands and Belgium, which requires a totally different set of skills.
So you've obviously been through a number of raises, and of course sometimes that can lead to a founder, the co-founders, who are the geniuses behind the initial concept. Of course, they build a tribe of people that follow and share the dream. But that can sometimes lead to dilution. What has been your experience, and therefore how's that impacted on you as you've been through the various rounds?
Of course. So I used to own half of the business at the start. My co-founder owned the other half. I now own much less than half the business because we've raised multiple rounds of investment. Personally, I'm really comfortable with that. I think I've got investors that still trust me to lead the business, run the team. Our board meets 6 times a year, and it's a really useful discussion forum. So the setup is comfortable to me, and I care. My motivator isn't what percentage of the company I own. My motivator primarily is to do a brilliant job for our customers and really change our industry, and I think we're making progress to do that, but have a long way still to go. Obviously I look to earn a living and support my wife and my daughters, along with my wife's income from my work, and so I do look to make money, but I feel that the stake I have in the business is a fair one for where the business is at and the amount of money that we've raised, and I'm really comfortable with the setup.
Okay.
So, big question, what are your growth plans? Well, what are your plans for Bloom and Wild 2022 and beyond?
So we are still really focused on building a single business out of our family of 3 brands, and sharing best practices between our different brands and countries. So I mentioned that we've introduced Bloom and Wild technology into Bloomon, which has been a big success. So there's more to do on that, even though we've made huge progress already. We've also been bringing together the supply chain of the different parts of the business so that we can have a more robust, more environmentally friendly, higher quality supply chain, and we'll continue to invest there. We similarly have acquired new capabilities from our acquisitions in flower subscriptions, in plants, in pop-up retail, and we'll be trying all of those things out for Bloom and Wild with the learnings that we have from our sister companies, Bloomon and Bergamot. And then beyond 2022, I think there's certainly scope for our business to expand into other countries over time, and to replicate some of what we've learned both through growing Bloom and Wild and then through bringing these other businesses into our group as we look further afield.
Wow, that's exciting, isn't it?
Ambitious.
Yeah, I just have one final question, and for me it's just always interesting to see what motivation, what inspires people, but I think we all get given great advice by people that have a big impact on our lives. What's been the greatest bit of advice you've been given that's really inspired you?
I've got two or three. My mum, who is wonderful, always sort of encouraged me to make that extra bit of effort when I was young, and she never sort of said what the extra bit of effort needed to be. I think she, and I think that was wise of her because she wanted me to figure it out for myself. But there are often ways of going the extra mile, whether it's sort of responding to that customer email or LinkedIn message yourself, whether it's taking the extra few minutes to chat to somebody at the end of the day who's had a difficult day or whatever it is, and that's been really important to me. I think as I've come into my professional career, I've talked a bit about boldness, ambition, vision already in this discussion, and I had a lot of people tell me early on to think big and not be sort of too timid in what I say our goals are, and over time I've become more comfortable with that and have found a way to balance that with my sort of natural humility from a style perspective, and that's been good advice and something I should have probably taken on board earlier on in the journey.
Yeah, okay. Aron, thanks so much for your time today. It's been brilliant hearing about all the Bloom and Wild story, and I think what's just absolutely mind-blowing is, you know, a young man who's created a business, you started as a rookie founder, you've been through so many rounds of investment, grown the business to a huge... How many people do you employ, by the way?
A little over 400.
A little over 400, still going strong, growing internationally, an incredible story, and just thank you so much for sharing it with us today. It's just been great to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Great, cheers, thank you.